Monday, September 9th. This is the most popular day of the year for a birthday. Just want to let everybody know that. And everybody needs to know that. Hey everyone, I'm James. Joining me up top is executive producer Heidi. Heidi, how's it going? I'm muting your mic. How you doing, Heidi?
I'm good.
Sorry about that.
Monday. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I hear you. September 9th, Monday. Big day for Star Wars. Sad day for Star Wars, actually.
Yeah, you ruined my day today.
Yeah, I ruined your day. Earlier today it was reported that James Earl Jones, the voice of Darth Vader, and many, many more parts, passed away. Yeah. 1931 to 2024. James Earl Jones. Sad day for Star Wars. Sad day for the Star Wars family. Is that how you found out? Was it on online on Twitter? I guess it was on. Everything's online now.
I had worked till 5:30, so I had gotten something from you that said that he had died. I'm like, oh my god. Well, it's funny because I'm farsighted and I have prescription readers, and I kind of looked at it without my glasses and I thought it said James and Jones died. I'm like, who are James and Jones? I'm like, well, you're James. And then I looked, oh, it's James Earl Jones. I'm like, oh.
It sounds like an obscure band from like the 60s, James and Jones.
Well, I used to think Olivia Newton-John was a band, but that's Olivia Newt-and-John, but that's another
It's like Peter, Paul, and Bjorn.
Yeah.
Peter, Paul, and Bjorn. Yeah, it's a sad day for Star Wars. I remember when the prequels were coming out, I believe there was a comment he made about, he got the call from George Lucas and he was like, hopefully I'll be around for that, and so it's always sad, and it's fun, you hear his voice in that, and his voice as Mufasa in The Lion King, and you're just like, oh man. And he also did the CNN voice as well.
Right.
He's like, this is CNN. And he was a great actor, obviously, many, many roles and parts for. Was Star Wars your first introduction to James Earl Jones?
Honestly, I didn't know he was in Star Wars till the 1990s when he hosted Evening at the Improv, and he was doing his Darth Vader voice, and I said, "Oh my god, I didn't know he's Darth Vader," because they didn't really do his name at the end of the credits until Return of the Jedi, and I didn't really pay attention to the Return of the Jedi, and then when I thought about it, I was like, oh my god, that is him. But I don't know if you know about this. He had a bad stutter as a child.
Really?
And he would, after he didn't talk till he was 14 to people because he was so embarrassed by it. And then every day after school, he would go upstairs and read out loud and practice. And eventually he got over a stutter. And it's interesting that someone with such a bad stutter became known for having such a great voice.
A great voice. Maybe that probably working on that stutter attributed to his voice being so fantastic and deep and just powerful.
Yeah, so now we lost both Darth Vaders because David Prowse died a couple years ago too. So both men who played him passed away. I don't know if you ever watched The Big Bang Theory, but for the 35-year anniversary of A New Hope, Carrie Fisher and James Earl Jones both had she had a cameo. He was actually he was throughout the whole episode, but that was apparently the first time they ever met because he was never on set, so she had never met him before. So the day where they shot together, she just ran up to him, threw her arms around him, and said, "Dad." So I like to think they're together again.
They're together up there, father and son. And he was, I know David Prowse was Vader in the suit, but James Earl Jones really was the character. Like, when you think of Vader, the breathing comes to mind, and James Earl Jones, baritone. It's baritone, right? His baritone voice coming through. And it's funny too, because we also think of Vader like very bassy, but in in A New Hope, he's kind of tinny. His voice is kind of like the Tin Man in A New Hope in a lot. Like it's not as the bass is. They didn't have the budget to make him sound like he was in a booth. So I think he talked into a frozen drink can. It's what he used for the
Actually, he
microphone.
was in a scuba gear. That's what I
Is he
heard.
actually in scuba gear?
Yeah.
That would be okay. That would make a lot of sense for that one.
And also, he said when he read the script for Empire Strikes Back, his first thought was, "Oh, he's lying." He did
Yeah, I
not
remember
believe
that.
that Vader was.
Did anyone believe that Vader was his father?
I did,
You did.
but my
Only
sister
you.
didn't because of what Obi-Wan said in A New Hope. So, because no one could imagine that Obi-Wan would lie.
Did that make you like? Does that make you feel any less or worse about like as Obi-Wan as a person as a character? Do you find him more trustworthy or less trustworthy with that?
He's human. It just makes him human.
Yeah.
I mean, really, it's just a retcon.
It totally is a absolutely it's a retcon. Most of the stuff I think that's something that people forget about with Star Wars though, is most of it is a retcon.
Yeah.
Like after A New Hope, it was all being retconned after that. There, he was, because you're a writer, you understand, like you make decisions later on, and when you're in the middle of your story, you can go back and change it. But when you're a movie in, you can't do that. You've got to correct it somehow. So you retcon it, and I think there's something wrong with retconning major events, but little things go nuts over, like things that only the most psychotic of fans are going to know about, then go nuts over.
Well, I mean, it's like with Leia making out with Luke and then saying in Return of the Jedi, "Oh, I knew we were always brother and sister." It's like, huh? Wait a minute. You practically made out with them.
Well, them being twins is, I guess, not it's kind of a retcon. They were never meant to be twins. They're supposed to be somebody else, right? So
Yeah. Well, I guess he was gonna have a twin sister, but it wasn't gonna be her.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Sorry, I'm reaching in. Yeah, no, it was supposed to be somebody else.
Yeah.
And then he decided to end it at 3 movies, and we have Luke and Leia are twins. And I mean, I always think of the one that I always think of is Halloween, the Halloween series with Jamie Lee Curtis. How in the first Halloween they're not related at all, and then in the second one related. And I always found it, I always thought that was the weirdest decision because I understand they're making it personal, but I always found it a lot harder to believe when they were related. Like even in the Rob Zombie one, I really felt like it didn't work, them being related. I was like, they're better separate to me personally. Like, I just think their storyline works better. But retconning, I think it does have a place in at the end of the day.
Well, I mean, I don't mean to go on Halloween, but yeah, I thought it was more intense that she was just at the wrong place at the wrong time. Not that they were actually related, because originally the original film was she just happened to walk up at the house and he mistook her for his sister.
Yeah.
So.
By the way, the opening scene of the first Halloween with the clown costume, with the clown mask, and you see this such a good opening.
Yeah.
So I would say that's up there. Star Wars, A New Hope, Star Wars, we'll call it Star Wars. That one's one of the greatest openings of all time also. Like it's set, and it's so great in so many ways. It's a lot grander than the Halloween one, but it's so good in so many ways because you get your introduction to the 2 droids who are going to take you on this journey.
Right.
You don't even realize it when you're watching it the first time. I can't, but and then the way the rebels are all gearing up for this ship to come towards them and locking in, and then you get the stormtroopers coming out, and then you get the greatest. No argument. I'm not accepting an argument on anybody. The greatest movie villain of all time, Darth Vader, stomps his way out, and the breathing, the whole scene is just so perfect.
I think originally he wasn't even supposed to be injured. It was the reason the stormtroopers and Vader dressed like that is because George Lucas couldn't think of any way to get them to go from ship to ship, so he created these outfits for them to breathe in space. But when he saw David Prowse in that outfit, it was just so menacing. He changed it to he's in this suit because he was badly injured.
Yeah, that I mean another retcon right there, and I believe that too because I didn't know that he was injured or anything until I mean Obi-Wan says he's more machine than man now,
Right.
but it still doesn't really give you the sense of what that really means. Like you know, I didn't know until way later that Obi-Wan was the reason for him being chopped up, and I think that was established in like in a Legends book or something because I was obsessed with the movies for so long and that's never brought up, and then I remember I was at an amusement park and the guy in front of me online was talking about Vader uh, how Vader and Obi-Wan fight and he falls into lava. And I was like, what the heck is all this going on about? I had no idea at the
Yeah.
time. And it was yeah, and then it happened. And then he
Right.
was like dead on. I mean, it obviously different changes and whatnot, but it was very exciting when James Earl Jones' voice came back for Revenge of the Sith. That was a nice piece to end up the prequels.
Well, I'm glad his voice was in the Obi-Wan series, and I'm assuming his family has approved for them to use his voice. So I'm hoping, so now that they have it, I think they can still use it for other things.
Yeah, that's something I'd like to talk about before we get into our topics. If anybody's watching and has a topic, just let us know in the chat and we'll talk about it. We have other things to talk about today as well, but I did want to talk about that because in Obi-Wan it was a synth voice, like AI synth voice, which they use for Luke, and a lot of people go nuts and crazy over that, and they hate it and can't stand it. I am not of that mindset. I'm okay with like you said, if the family signs off on it, or if the actor signs off on it earlier on, and you can do it, I'm okay with it. It's a little strange. I mean, I maybe I'd prefer an actor to do it, but I had no issue with it in Obi-Wan at all. And I had no issue with the way they portrayed Tarkin in Rogue One or Leia in Rogue One. I thought Tarkin looked better than Leia, but I think I'm okay with that, and I kind of hope so in the future as well. And then maybe he can get, and it would be nice if he gets credit for that also if
Right.
they use him in the future, right? Like it's James Earl Jones, and his name is in the credits.
I think they have to put the voice of James Earl Jones
Yeah, I think that would
at
be.
least. Um, well, another thing, because he's in the Vader suit, that would actually work better than other actors who you may reuse their voices.
Because he's hidden by a
Right.
mask. Yeah, so you can get away with it a little bit more. Yeah, I agree.
I would have kept Tarkin and Leia looking the reflection in the window because when Tarkin originally appears in Rogue One, you see his
Yeah.
face as a reflection in the window. I might have done that with him and Leia, but I mean, you get what you get. You can't complain. The only other option is to recast people like Star Trek did.
Yeah, and I don't know. I know Star Wars has obviously recasted. Obi-Wan Kenobi was recast. Anakin, obviously, but I don't know how fans would react because people have mentioned like Sebastian Stan for Luke
Right.
Skywalker, and I think as time has gone on, people might be a little bit more into that. But I don't know, like 3 or 4 years ago, if they would have done that, if people would have been, if people would have been as on board as they say, as everyone wants you to believe they were on board with it. I just don't know if people would be as accepting of Sebastian Stan or another actor portraying Luke Skywalker back then. And then I know that the AI reaction was what it was, but I don't know how much different it would have been if they got another actor to play him. I don't know. Like you look at Han Solo, people weren't, that movie made no money. People weren't ecstatic over Alden Ehrenreich as Han Solo. So I don't know if Luke would have been even worse.
Well, I think the fans have actually been clamoring for Sebastian Stan to take over, and I think even Mark Hamill has suggested Sebastian Stan. It's kind of funny because when Mark Hamill read for Star Wars, uh, he thought Luke Skywalker was the sidekick and Han Solo was the star, so he thought he was gonna be Bucky. Which the funny thing is that Sebastian Stan played Bucky.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, a little off topic, but
No, that's what this show's all about. Ron's got a comment here. Boom. A lot of my extended information came from the RPG games. Much of that was repurposed concepts and ideas from the movies. That's true too. And they did that. They've been doing that in the Disney era as well with Rebels and whatnot. They used a lot of the old concept arts, and they bring it into the modern storytelling. We got Scotty Hawk is here. He can give me a thumbs up when he's good to go.
Okay.
He thought it was 9. I don't know if I might have told him 9 by accident. I want to make him nervous jumping into it when he's good to go. Give me a thumbs up, Scotty, when you're good to go.
Well, they did that with Rise of Skywalker. That they Palpatine's return was at the end of a video game or something. Appeared in a video game when he was returning for Rise of Skywalker. Like, he didn't return in a movie or The Last Jedi. His voice was in a game that came out before Rise of Skywalker. I don't play video games, so I don't know what it was, but I think there was a video game where his voice just appeared, and that was his comeback lead into.
Oh, that was Fortnite, right?
Yeah.
Scotty's joining us. Scotty from Hawks Holocrons right here. He knows a
For
little
the
bit
record,
about games.
it's on me. That's on me.
Yeah.
That's on me. You did tell me the time. I'm sorry. September 9th at 8. Oh
yeah, you got the two times mixed up. Yeah. But it was
been a crazy
Fortnite.
day over here outside of like what we were scheduling to talk about with all everything else that dropped. So I've been trying to catch up on that stuff too. But what are we talking about? Fun stuff? Fortnite?
Right now, we start off with some James Earl Jones, paying respect to James Earl Jones and the great performance there. Mm-hmm. And then somehow we got to Palpatine's return, and Heidi brought up that he came back actually in a video game first, and I believe that was Fortnite. They did like a little Fortnite tease like few weeks or a month before the movie came out, and you might know a couple things about video games.
I wonder why they would bring a Palpatine skin back right before this movie. That's so weird. You know me, man. I've said it for years that the toys ruin everything. Lego, all of the leaks that come out from Lego, like that spoils more movies than any YouTuber ever could. So,
well, I was 8 years old when The Empire Strikes Back came out, and the novel came out before the movie. So, if you got the novel, guess what?
Or the Phantom Menace soundtrack with Qui-Gon's noble end. And you're kind of like, his death scene. Perfect. Oh, spoilers for the Phantom Menace for anybody that hasn't seen the Phantom Menace yet.
I forgot about that. It's been years.
What? I was just in the middle of it. How could that happen?
Qui-Gon's a wuss.
But he's an Obi. He's on the Kenobi show.
Yeah, but he can be killed by being run through with a lightsaber.
Nobody nowadays. Actually, no.
I'm kidding.
He was the last of his kind. We see in the Acolyte they die by lightsaber, and he's the last one to get killed by a lightsaber. After that, stabs don't matter anymore. You're good after that. We got some right here. Disney Desi is R.I.P. James Earl Jones, and Vermont Mike. James Earl Jones has one of the greatest monologues in movie history, and that is "I want them alive" from A New Hope. It's the whole monologue right there. Scotty, before we get into our main topic, any thoughts on James Earl Jones, your favorite performance of his, maybe aside from Star Wars or Star Wars, whatever, and or The Lion King? How about that?
I mean, this is probably a lot of people's go-to outside of Star Wars is the Sandlot. I don't know. Maybe he was the neighbor that everybody was afraid of, but ended up being a super nice guy. And he gave him like a replacement ball for the Baby Ruth signed baseball.
And Vermont Mike wants us to know he was talking about Field of Dreams. Yes, Sandlot, Field of Dreams. Yeah. Plethora of great, and you mentioned Big Bang Theory. Heidi was one.
You said
all right.
Bang?
Was he? Yeah.
He did an episode with Carrie Fisher, and that was the first rehashing, but that was the first time they ever met. She ran up to him and said, "Dad," and now they're together. So
that's funny.
It's kind of crazy that they did those movies like 30 years, 20 years before that show, and they just met for the first time. You'd think, like, even though they obviously are on the set, maybe a premiere or maybe an award ceremony or something, but it took all of that.
Well, they were hiding him from the public, so maybe he was, maybe he showed up to the Oscars, but nobody knew he was Vader until, like I said, Return of the Jedi.
That's true. They probably met 100 times before that.
Yeah.
You're my father. All right. Topic today. We're going to go deep. We got Freddie Roy here. He's got so many thoughts on these YouTube folk. Boy, do I have thoughts. So let's talk a little bit about, I didn't really want to, I was thinking about not doing it, but it's everywhere. And our original topic was going to be, is Star Wars likable? I'll do another video on that one day, but is Star Wars likable? And Scotty, I don't know if I can, if you want to say the comment that you made to me, or we can keep that private if you want, because you said something that was very true to me, and I laughed, and I was like, but that's honestly it.
Well, I feel like, no, I stand by what I say. I said that to him in private conversation that I feel like currently the Star Wars fans are making it unlikable. We're not even having good, like, wholesome speculation anymore. It's just talking about whether you like the thing or not. So,
yeah, and I actually completely agreed with that sentiment.
Yeah.
And a few weeks ago, or a month ago, I don't know what it was, we did a fun video, is Jude Law Palpatine or something like that on the channel, just for old time's sake, like the old Snooky Snoke theories that we used to do, just for fun. Nobody watched the video. Nobody watched the video. First of all, it's dumb, but it was, and we say right off the bat, we're not serious. We're just gonna have some fun and bring, because we want to, like, remember back in those days before The Last Jedi, Star Wars was fun to talk about. It was fun, like everybody was having fun, and Heidi and I did a few post Acolyte shows on the channel, and Heidi is a fan of the series as a whole, but we did episodes where we weren't, either one of us liked what we watched, where we were like, what did we just watch? But we weren't, it wasn't like we weren't pissing on anything. We were just being open and honest about it. And I think there's a difference between being way too accepting and way too, what's the opposite of accepting? That, there's the negative and the positive, and I think sometimes we get a little too obsessed. And I think, to your point, Scotty, it is exhausting watching YouTube, social media, whether it's YouTube, Twitter, whatever it is, Facebook, all of the above. It's exhausting. But I also think sometimes, especially YouTubers, I'll speak for myself too, is you buy into your own hype, into what, like, if I say right now that apples are better than peaches, and Scotty, you disagree, and how do you're like, you're right, and the chat blows up, and they're like, James knows apples is better than peaches. Next week, I'm only talking about apples and how great apples are, because now I'm convinced myself that that's the greatest thing on the planet, and I'm almost getting it too, even though I like peaches. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that's how this is going on both sides. Is the same type of thing where you start believing your own hype, and it just, I don't know, it just is exhausting every day. And here we are with, Forbes has an article on this, and that's where we got the title. It's the Star Wars YouTube Civil War has started, and that's when
begun. The YouTube wars have.
That would have been better. Damn it, Forbes. But this is where we are, where Star Wars fans can't just like or even nitpick and talk about things they don't like anymore. It's got to be full blown war.
Yeah, and I can totally resonate with what Freddie Roy is saying about it took him completely out of streaming, and like he's got real life shit to deal with. And personally, like, I love Star Wars. My channel has changed names. It was very Star Wars centric when I started this journey. Now I've kind of faded back into more gaming. One, because those can be longer streams and we can talk about everything in there. And when Star Wars stuff comes up, I'm still talking about it. But I definitely regretted starting this journey as a Star Wars channel because of where we're at. And I don't think it's ever going to go back. Like, I don't see a time where there's a creative currently there that's going to make a project that everybody resonates with. Even things like Andor that are highly, liked, I guess I would say, it's still in a time frame that people are getting bored of, for a lack of a better word. Like, I say all the time, it's like, we need a 12th retelling of how the rebels stole the Death Star plans. Like, isn't there more going on in the galaxy that we can talk about? But then all the new stuff is like rejected. So I would hate to be over there. I think it's better that they just do a little bit of everything, which is what I think they're trying to do. So
I think the problem with the Acolyte is because it failed. Now are they going to be afraid to do something in another time period? Is that what they're going to blame the failure of the Acolyte on? Is, well, we weren't connected to the Skywalker saga in any way, so maybe we should just, like, that's a fear that's like, just play around that sandbox a little more. Let's see what you got. And I said this on last week's podcast. Look, you can do the Acolyte, and for me, it didn't work totally. I didn't hate it like a lot of people, but it didn't work for me totally. But I'm still okay with it. Like, you tried something, it didn't work for me. Let's see what you got next. Skeleton Crew looks completely different from the Acolyte. I know it looks great. I think it looks great, but it looks
really good
from the Acolyte. So let's see what you got. Let's see what's coming up on the pipeline. Don't be afraid. Like, if somebody comes in with a really cool, unique idea, don't be too afraid to do it. Because I know people get really mad online, but you know what? If it doesn't work, just do the next one. Just, just do what Marvel does. Just pump. Marvel keeps pumping them out. You're like, oh, you didn't like that one? The next one's here. And you're like, okay, I forget about that one. I like this one. Heidi, you're here from like an outsider perspective without a channel. How do you feel about the online community of Star Wars right now?
I mean, there are like Star Wars channels I can't even go with because there's just like visceral hatred in the comments and I can't read them. I don't understand if you don't like, not you, I'm just saying in general, if the person doesn't like Star Wars anymore, then why do they care about it? Why do they keep ragging on it? Then get a life and move on to something else. Let the rest of us sit back and enjoy it because they're the ones who are ruining it. I mean, if there was no internet, I'm wondering if Solo would have been a smash hit. But I remember when Lucasfilm was sold to Disney in like 2012, and there are people who were already upset. So, I mean, it's always had that that Disney, even before the films came out, whether people liked them or didn't like them, they still had that that hatred towards Disney that I think tainted a lot of the fans.
How do you think sorry, go on.
I was going to say, like, Acolyte, and I keep harping on this, but those lightsaber fights and the first original Star Wars villain in a long time, as great as Darth Vader is, every other Star Wars villain has been a copy, and we got introduced to a whole completely new character, and I'm afraid they're just going to throw them away.
Yeah, I think Vermont Mike's making a great point here, where he says they care about it because they want it improved. That's my guess. Some take it too far. I think there's validity in that, right? Because I think, I say this from someone on this channel with Brock and Andrew and Rob, who, like, the Last Jedi was very split among us. Like, Brock and Andrew loved it. Rob couldn't stand it, and I was kind of I liked it. I was like, this is fine. but I can say that because like our viewership changed drastically after that movie. Like, we were getting, I think it's like thousands of views, and then that movie came out and it just was like, screw you. And it's because people didn't like that movie so much they wanted to like it, and they didn't really, and it ticked them off, obviously. And then as Star Wars has gone on, they haven't been as happy with what they're getting, and because of that, they're not watching these videos, they're watching those videos. Then the algorithm goes into it, and that plays it up. But I think a lot of it came from a genuine place of we want this to be better, and then just, you have an outlet now, right? Everyone has an outlet here, and they use that to vocalize it. And like I said earlier, you just start to believe it, and all of a sudden, this is all it is. There's no getting out of this. You're in quicksand, and Star Wars is dead.
But I just want to say what I'm talking about. There's a difference between being a fan who really wants something to improve, and there's another difference between someone who's just a troll who just wants to cause problems.
I think trolls are like
a certain
orcs.
Way.
Trolls are like orcs. They're bred from the hate that came from the genuine video about someone not liking X or Y. And then the trolls are born, and then the person who made that video is like, yes, I am right. And then it builds up from that. And then, look, the same is true on the other end, I would say, too, where you're like, this is the greatest thing ever. Is it the greatest thing ever? It was, is it? I don't know. I think at the end of the day, going outside and having a beer on the grass is probably best for everybody. But
I mean, like, Desi and I have the same opinions on this. We both like the Reylo romance. We even both like the romance between Osha and Chimere. But there are people who are probably like, oh, that's stupid. How can you like that? That just ruins Star Wars. It's like, because I like it. That's my opinion. But don't hate me for that, and I won't hate you for your opinion.
Yeah, I just wish that some of the bigger channels took more responsibility of the way they're speaking, because it does make the fandom as a whole look pretty terrible when the majority of the eyes that you're getting on your channels that are outside of Star Wars are only seeing the arguing or only seeing the negative. Like, the evidence is building up, and I agree with people in the chat, saying that this all started with The Last Jedi. I don't think that comments that Rian Johnson made helped, but I think people also over exaggerated what he was saying. He's like, I don't think it's a bad thing that 50% of the entire population of the earth doesn't like a movie and 50% of them do. He thinks that that's like the goal of a good film. Maybe in his mind, that's one of the goals he looks for in his film is divisiveness. He's one guy. And I think a lot of people ran with that because of how much control he was given story-wise. The story now, since then, hasn't really gone very far outside of that. I think it's out of fear that they've gone back and done things like Andor that have been successful. But I think people are also starting to see through this armor. And I, for one, am really struggling to find content that they can actually make that's outside of the 6 films. Even playing now, I'm playing Star Wars Outlaws. The plot for the film, if it's just like another generic, here we go, boy howdy heist thing, like with no huge implications in it, like Survivor, bringing in a new Jedi, Cal Kestis, like, if this is a new outlaw, if these are new characters, they need prevalence in the current timelines. Like, everything you do is being watched with a microscope from this fandom. So to put a game out like this in this time period, to not have something huge happening in it, is just another letdown for me personally. I don't know.
Oh, like playing it safe.
Well,
playing it very safe, yeah.
If you look at, like, I'm sorry. The thing about cold feet, we've been talking about how that's one of the problems is cold feet. And you think about it, a lot of these films have gone through rewrites and reshoots. I mean, some haven't even been made. I think Solo started out more of a comedy, and then Disney came in and said no, and they fired the 2 guys, and they brought in Richie Cunningham. Yeah, block his name. And then as good as Rogue One was, I think that was did a lot of reshoots on that one as well, and I think there were some others that did. The original 3rd film in the sequel trilogy was completely scrapped, and they brought J.J. Abrams back, and then he wrote Rise of Skywalker, and that was another thing. They gave all these directors carte blanche to do whatever they want, but they never connected together.
They're very reactionary over there, it feels like. Like, now they're going to do only one Star Wars show a year. I mean, Brock and I talked about this the other day. If you can sit through that stream, it's tough to sit through, but they're doing one a year, which they said they're going to do one movie a year or whatever. And now we're going to get 2 movies in 2026. Like, it's like they go back on their word on everything they say. They hire this director, that director gets fired, but they hire like Trevorrow because Jurassic World was such a big hit. But then his next movie, Book of Henry, is a total bomb in every sense of the word. And all of a sudden he's out the door, and they had issues with him, and he wasn't professional. Blah, all this other stuff comes out, and then you get the guys from 21 Jump Street who are known for. I mean, obviously Spider-Man was different, but it was improv. There's a lot of improv. You know what they're in for. I'm sure in their hiring process they knew what they were all about. And then halfway through the production, you're like, nah, you know what? This isn't the direction we wanted to go in. And then they go Ron Howard, and it's just such a weird. So many weird decisions have been made that I think really help validate the negativity on online, like, because these things are happening, and somebody can go on their YouTube channel or Twitter or whatever and be like, Disney Star Wars sucks, and they can just point to all of these reasons, and your argument against it is, yeah, but I liked it. Like that's like that, like it's like Lucasfilm, and they're making it tough to be on their side in a lot of it. Like, because I've genuinely enjoyed most of what, I'm not all of it, but I've enjoyed most of what we've gotten, and and I know all the issues, and I'm like, but I've liked it, but I can't. But when I look at it, when I take myself out and I step back, and I see all the issues they have, I'm like, what is going on over there? Like, are there too many cooks in the kitchen right now making is there too many boardroom meetings that are just coming down on everybody? Because I know everybody likes to blame Kathleen Kennedy, and I'm sure she should get some blame and praise and whatever, but there's higher ups who got to be like on her shoulder, just hey, what are you doing?
Yeah, panicking. Panic.
Yeah, exactly.
They have to be in full. I'm not like full blown panic at Lucasfilm right now, because every project outside of, let's, for lack of a better word, the sacred timeline, like what happens after episode, what's going on with Rey, what's going on with all these characters, everything outside of that has really not been that great, or the storylines that they're telling have a dead end because we know what happens with the Death Star. So it's like, you guys got to figure out where the future of Star Wars goes, or you need to gaslight, like not gaslight, but light the fire underneath all these other projects like Dawn of the Jedi and go all the way back to the beginning. And I am very worried for all these projects. I am very worried for any new canon that they introduce, because it's going to be microscope every single new piece of canon that they introduce. They couldn't even say that. They couldn't even introduce that cortosis as a helmet or whatever would with lightsabers. So I thought that was a really cool piece to add to the canon. But some people are raging, and you have to expect that at Lucasfilm. Just don't be afraid to create whatever, I don't know.
Well, it's kind of like that last episode where she bleeds the kyber crystal. I thought that was really cool. And people are complaining, oh, but it takes a long time to do that. It can take a few days. I'm like, well, do you want to sit and watch a 40-minute episode of her holding a kyber crystal and making it bleed? It's something that you read in a book is going to be different than something you see on TV.
Yeah, and with that, it's like that started out so cool for every single person watching it, and then the thing that ruined it is that it was a blue blade that turned into red. Now, go back, edit that entire scene down. Don't have her ignite it until the crystal's fully transformed red, and then a fast ignite of a red saber. Maybe that's accepted a little bit differently. But we got to use our damn imagination sometimes. And I don't know. I just don't know where the excitement went. Everything turned into he said, she said, this was better than that. What about isms? Deflecting. There's a lot of deflecting in the fandom. For instance, the spin shot that got over, you know what I'm talking about. It's in the Book of Boba Fett in the fight scene when the guy does the twirl and then shoots. Yeah. People are over analyzing that to the point where they're going back talking about the Vader Kenobi fight where they're spinning for no reason. It's like, guys.
And that's part of the new digital era where you can pause. I mean, this happened with DVD most, but you could pause, go frame by frame, and people with DVD with the prequels, they didn't go frame by frame back then. They did for Disney movies for other reasons, but Star Wars not so much. But now, yeah, and you can go frame by frame, and it's all crystal clear every shot because it's so crystal clear, and you can just pinpoint anything you want to be like, this is so. And I see that all the time when they complain about things. And for me, like I said, the Acolyte, I think there were genuine things that you could talk about and discuss and nitpick and say, hey, this isn't very good. This wasn't done well here. This wasn't done well there. But the things that are coming to the forefront are the most, Kiadi Mundi, Scotty, Heidi knows how I feel. Did not give a crap. I didn't care. First of all, I didn't know until someone posted the credits that it was him. Yeah. Because I didn't care. Kiadi Mundi is only popular because of a meme. Okay? Great. Who cares? Oh, he should have been. Don't care. There are other things like the time it takes to get to a planet. That was annoying me in the show a lot because they're we have to go to this planet. It took one group of people 6 days, and the other ones just got there in drop of a hat. That was annoying to me. Ki-Adi-Mundi was not, and there's other things I can't remember that popped up that people complained about. That I'm like, no, these are just, you just want to hate this to hate it.
Well, can you imagine if the internet was around during Return of the Jedi when Boba Fett gets killed?
I saw a GIF today of the walker getting taken out with the cables wrapped around its legs. They're like, could you imagine if they put that in the sequel trilogy and that was the first time we saw them take one of those things out? Like, people would be losing their minds right now.
You brought up a good point with the cortosis. You can't, and the lights, the bleeding the crystal, you can't do anything. Like, they're strapped down. Now, I don't know if Rian Johnson did everything he should have done, but I think Heidi brings this up all the time, where the DJ stuff, he talks about how money's been, that was interesting.
Yeah.
And it goes nowhere.
They showed the guy selling TIE fighters and X-Wings. Like,
yeah, and it's like, okay, Rian Johnson has some good ideas. And they're like, but you know what? Half or whatever the fandom was really mad at him. So scratch that and bring Palpatine back.
If I'm working at Ubisoft and I'm making an Outlaws game, I'm including that guy in the game. The guy that's selling the X-Wings and the TIE fighters, he should probably be in this. We should probably figure out who that guy is at some point. Why not put it in a video game?
And you know what? Maybe that's when you reveal it's Palpatine. Palpatine's the guy who's selling because he knows that he can come to power if he starts a civil war.
Yeah, but then you can't say he returned because the dark side is a pathway to things that blah blah. Like that requires thinking, is what I'm trying to say.
Let your hatred flow.
What do we got? We got Brent. I loved Kenobi. No Star Wars has hit me so hard emotionally, but I had to step away from the internet because the weekly negativity affected my enjoyment. So Kenobi isn't one of my favorites, but I don't. It's not because of the reasons everybody else hates it. It just didn't hit me the way that it hit Brent. But there are things in Kenobi that are brilliant also, like the Underground Railroad stuff. Like, there's stuff in it that's like so well done. The Vader, I mean, obviously Vader and Kenobi fighting is fantastic. This is like, and this is what drives me nuts is like the middle is, I think, where a lot of this stuff is. I don't think they've done anything over the top spectacular at all, right? I think it's all been for the most part fine. And for some reason, we don't accept fine anymore. It's got to be the best or nothing. But I still think if The Acolyte was a movie, you probably hit $1 billion. If that thing's a movie, like, you probably still, if not, you
can do more with it and expand that story. Hell yeah.
Exactly. When it would have been a movie. Yeah,
absolutely.
I know I keep saying this, but they've spent millions of dollars on the show and they own 2 terrestrial TV stations. They own ABC and Fox. Just put it on one of those and then it gets out to the public.
Well, they did that for, was it Miss Marvel? They threw on ABC or something, I think. There was one show, I think it was Miss Marvel, they threw on television. I can't remember what it was. But that's an idea. Yeah, I don't know what their plan is with The Acolyte. Obviously, it's not coming back for season 2, blah, blah, blah. But, like, I don't think they're going to delete it. So why not just throw it on ABC when you know, instead of running, I mean, maybe they don't want to pay the people involved. Who knows what their deal? That's the other thing. We don't know what the deals are that everybody signed, right? We don't know if they put it on cable, whatever, if they have to pay more money to them. So they might not want to do that. So who knows what it is, but
yeah, that's terrestrial. That's free.
If they're not paying attention to the fans by now, it's like, what are we even doing, like, as a company? You know, even the things that you just mentioned in Kenobi about the path, like, everybody was talking about the path. They're like, wait, what is that? So when the fandom does a hard stop on something like that, lean into that. Like, this, I'm just a guy, but it's like, do the stuff that's really good, just do more of it. And everything else, I think, will kind of fall into place. Like, there's so many storylines for me out there that are just left on the line. Like, there's stuff at the end of Ahsoka. There's stuff at the end of the Cal Kestis video game. You know, there's just stuff out there. There's just end story just waiting to be told. And we're just getting a new video game story. Now we're getting the Skeleton Crew. That's something new. If that doesn't do good, or we don't it's not received very well, it's going to be just another storyline out there that goes nowhere. It's like,
well, the OG one is Kira and Darth Maul.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like
the ending of Solo, like,
yeah. It's like,
I think people are tired of getting that stuff without.
Yes.
Like, don't just show me the cake. I want to eat it too at this point.
And I think that's where a lot of people were with the Acolyte. They're like, why am I going to watch this? And I want to know what the viewership is like a month when all the episodes are out. Are people going back and watching? Are people watching it for the first time? Then are they going to watch shows like that because they don't trust it anymore? And the Acolyte, for me, I actually thought it actually concluded pretty well, but it ended where I was hoping it would start. Like it ended. I'm like, oh, this is the show I want to watch now. Let's go. So I'm wondering if people have just aren't into what we're getting because they don't trust it, because we've had Ahsoka and Mando, I guess Mando and and Boba Fett both kind of, but Kenobi, they kind of feel like almost incomplete, a lot of them. And I know Heidi and I have talked about this. The episodes a lot of times feel incomplete now, when it's like it just stops in the middle of a scene and you're like, what's happening? Oh, the credits. Okay, I got to finish the show next week. It's like it's almost like they're just not fulfilling what they're doing for some reason. And our fans just sick of that, and they don't trust it. And if the Acolyte, I'm going to use it as an example because it's the most recent and it makes sense. But if you hear, oh, this show's not very good, are you even going to bother going back to watch it when it's all up? When you can watch all of it at once and binge it, are you even going to bother? If someone says, show X is terrible, and you're like, oh, I've been waiting to binge it, and you keep hearing that's not good from everybody, are you even going to bother after that? I don't know if I would.
I can't recall a show that I've heard that people have not liked very much that I've been like, hey, I'm gonna go check that out. So yeah, it definitely hurts. Definitely all of the talk on the YouTube hurts. Someone said that earlier. It's like the content creators are. It was funny, actually. Content creators are ruining the content, essentially, which is like, I mean,
that's so true. That's kind of what you said off the top.
Yeah.
I think it might have done better if they had just dropped it, because it was written as a binge show more than an episodic show. I mean, Mandalorian season 2, I don't know, to me, like, yeah, it's like they completed an episode and you just wanted more. And every week it just kept getting better and better. Like, I don't know how they're going to top it this week. And then they did. That didn't happen with the Acolyte. It would just end like in the middle of something going on. And I thought, like I said, there were things I didn't like about the Acolyte, and there were things I thought were amazing. And I think it would have been appreciated more if they just dropped it all at once. And same thing with Mandalorian season 3, because I showed it to my sister. We binge watched it one night. She's like, I don't know why people are complaining about this show. I thought that was amazing.
I think Boba Fett also is a binge show too, right? Because these are just one big long story that just kind of go, and you're like, oh, why isn't, like, I know Bob Iger said no movies on Disney Plus for Star Wars, but man, if Boba Fett, I mean, I know everyone pretends they love Boba Fett from the movies, but you love Boba Fett because of the toy you had. Yeah. Like, Boba Fett is a Mandalorian character at this point. If he's spun off from the Mandalorian, just make it a movie. I think you can get away with making a made for Disney Plus movie if it's based on a character that is essentially introduced to us from a Disney Plus show. I don't see why. Like, you can give me a Boba Fett movie, make it 2 hours, whatever you want, and I will sit there and watch. Although I will say, one thing that was I heard interesting was Zack Snyder mentioned this about Netflix. Netflix said you can make a 2 hour. He said Netflix said that people watch movies for 2 hours. They will binge watch something like 4 or 8 hours of a TV show, but movies they give 2 hours. And I thought that was kind of interesting, and maybe that's Disney's thought. But Netflix drops everything at once. They're like, you're binging this, and you know what? Actually, you're going to binge half of it. We're going to put the other half in a month. But they still make you binge it, right? They're like all at once. And I think those shows, the ones that I've seen anyway, they work a lot better than some of these Star Wars shows as a show, because I'm watching them all at once. So I don't have to wait a week to get the second half of that episode. That doesn't register with me that it's the next episode a lot of the times until it says, are you still watching? No. Yes, I am. So I think, I know they want you to come weekly to watch these shows so they can keep their subscriptions up, But maybe if they try binging once in a while, or doing what they did with Andor and drop 3 episodes at once, maybe that's a better way to get the fandom to sit there and watch what they're feeding us.
Or make them more special presentations. Do 2 special presentations a year that tie together somehow.
Yeah,
make them a more feature length like movie type thing. I don't know.
We got Al Schuler. The shows that are tightly run that stick to the basics of Star Wars kill it when they allow folks who don't really know the lore to store playing around with fundamental concepts. It gets iffy.
Well, I mean, Andor, the what's his name? The guy who did that, Tony Gilroy.
Gilroy, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't know anything about Star Wars, and he probably ended up doing some of the best Star Wars.
Yes, and to Al's point, like that Star Wars is simple, and I believe like even the first 3-4 episodes, I'm in here watching it with some people that are here, and the talk every week is this doesn't really feel like a Star Wars show. It feels like it's like a spy espionage show set in a Star Wars galaxy. So that like these are all little like cherry picked things that Lucasfilm can take. Be like, okay, fans really enjoyed that. How do we recreate this in another show, or how do we make this feel? And I agree with him saying, and that's what I'm saying about all these shows where even the plot lines are iffy. At the end of your series, you don't have a stamp on the ending, or it's like these cliffhangers that we don't really know where they're gonna go. Like I'm done with that. I'm done with those types of shows. It's got to be Sacred Timeline or a movie. You know what I mean? Like it's got to be a movie, or it's got to be a Sacred Timeline TV show that takes us. It's got to move us from this part in the plot to like here. It has to elevate the story every single time.
I'll say this: I'd be okay with a cliffhanger ending if they end the series, if they end the season, because I think Andor ends with a bit of a cliffhanger, but the season ends because we get where we need to go. And the other half of what I'm saying is there's a promise and a guarantee of the next season. Don't just do a cliffhanger. If you're told you can have one season, don't end it on a cliffhanger. Because what if we don't get the next season? Finish your story and then give me the tease for what's coming up next. I thought Andor did a great job. And, Book of Boba Fett kind of is like that with Mando season 2, where we got the tease for that show at the end of the last episode. I think that's the way it's a little different than a cliffhanger, but I think I'd be okay with it like that. But also to Al's point, though, it's the simplicity, like you said, Scotty. The Acolyte wasn't about twins. It wasn't about the High Republic Jedi. It wasn't about the Sith. There was too much going on almost. There was so much, too much plot happening and too little a time. And I'm just using the Acolyte, but it's been like that. There's been a few shows, Mandalorian season 3. That's why they're better binge shows, because they're just throwing so much at you all at once. And you're like, if you just kind of compact it, make it nice and neat, it gives us time to focus, and it gives the writers and the showrunners and the actors time to focus as well, and we can buy into it and then do the other stuff in the second season. Because if you make the first season better, the second season will happen. It's Star Wars. People are going to watch Star Wars. They left, obviously, this show, but they're going to like Star Wars. It's getting on thin ice now, but I still think it's a guarantee win when it comes to obviously if you screw it up, it's not, but I think it's a guarantee win.
Well, I have 2 points about the Acolyte, and my biggest complaint about it is that we're going in and we're being told, this is the end of the High Republic. It's about how the Jedi Council basically made bad decisions. It's like, but they didn't make a bad decision. They told them, leave the witches alone. Don't bother them. We don't have any proof they're doing anything wrong. So it's like, oh, they're going to say how they're corrupt and how they make all these bad decisions and ruin everything. No, the Jedi Council, it didn't prove they were corrupt. It proved they should have listened to them. And another thing about Acolyte or any other Disney show, I think what Lucasfilm or Disney needs to say to someone like Leslie Headland, we want to try for 2 seasons, but we can't guarantee you're only going to get 2 seasons. So if you want to get a story out, you're going to have to figure out how to get it in 1 season in case you don't get that second season. So she was promised 2 seasons, and she wasn't allowed to finish what her original vision was.
But there's a lot of shows that just, they wrap up their story, their seasonal story at the end, and then they leave themselves room for the second season to exist. And I think like Sopranos is one. I think that that show wraps up their story in the first season, but it leaves room for the second season. I haven't watched in like 20 years, but I remember like I was like, oh, the story's done, and then they come back and there's
the
other shows
problem
like
with
that.
Star Wars is that, like I said, there's no room to tell more story. Like you're running out of real estate with some of this stuff. I don't know, that the Acolyte definitely could have stretched out into more things, but that felt very rushed too. Like we jumped right into this guy, Chimere, having his eye on this apprentice. We should have learned way more about his character. They showed us scars on his back. We have to make so many assumptions in the show. It's like, if you're going to do a Sith-centric show, start out centered on that dude. Everybody loved him. You loved him. He obviously crushed his audition. Everybody was talking about him. So I don't know, man. It just shows feel rushed when there's not a simple and/or plot. We're moving from point A. We know what point B is. They don't know where the ending of this is. They brought in Plagueis as like the cliffhanger because we as fans know eventually that's where the Sith story has to go. But I don't know. I thought we were going to get all these other Sith in between, leading up to him. All this stuff has to connect back to Dawn of the Jedi. We know we're going to get Old Republic stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know why they don't want to go forward. Like go past Ray. They can even go past Ray. Like, go 200 years in the future. Go somewhere where we don't know what the outcome is. But I had no problem, honestly, with the time frame of the Acolyte. But like you, I thought this was going to be a Sith-centric show. But Chimere, Stranger manages. He crushed the role. He was so good in it. And like I said, when it ended, I'm like, this is what I want to watch. I want to watch this guy be a Sith and maybe train as a whatever. This is what I want. And now, because the show failed, they'll probably never bring that. He'll go in the Darth Maul,
I can tell you where he'll show up.
Oh yeah,
I know exactly. He's gonna, dude. I'm telling you right now that this guy will show up in High Republic novels, High Republic comics. We will figure out when he became a Padawan. We will figure out when Vernestra Rose started training him. But it's like, man, the letdown. That's what I'm saying. The letdown as a High Republic fan, someone who has read the adult novels and the main comic line, hands down, some of the best goddamn Star Wars you'll ever read. Nobody can deny that actually gets through some of this stuff. Like, you got to do it for yourself. You can't listen to even me. You got to like be a fan and want to look into the High Republic stuff. The main thing that upsets me about the Acolyte is that none of these writers were involved. Where is Charles Soule? Where is Kevin Scott? Like, they're tweeting from the sidelines. Like, what is going on? Why are they not in the room where it happens?
And that was the big thing with the High Republic, right? Is they had the big writer's room with the big whiteboard and they wrote dinosaurs on it and all those words and stuff on it. But they were like a team that came together. And I think that really is.
And they're crushing that story.
Yeah, Brock's. I haven't read any of it.
NPC haircuts and whatever else. Like, they're crushing that story.
I haven't read. Brock's read them. I think most of them. He loves it too. I haven't yet. I haven't financially been willing to dive into that yet. But I hear good things. But that's the thing with Star Wars is it used to be George Lucas, and love it or hate it, it was whatever the hell he wanted is what you were getting. And now it's maybe this person, but also this person's giving them notes, but they're getting their notes from this person, who's getting their notes from this person, who's also getting their notes from there might, like we said earlier, it might be too many cooks, might be too many notes going on, and they're getting scared, like you said, like decisions are being made based on the storm, the YouTube civil war that's happening right now. There will probably be changes made because of this civil war that'll make no sense to anybody. And this is what happens when Rian Johnson mentions Mike Zero in it and J.J. Abrams mentions Fandom Menace in it. All of a sudden, you're giving the power to all these people that are like, hey, they know we exist. And
bro, I will never forgive Rian Johnson for that Mike Zero comment. I am a huge Last Jedi fan, and I'll never forgive him for that comment. That was unnecessary.
But like that's like it's like leave them out of your mouth because you're giving them more power now.
Yes.
And Heidi said, I think before we recorded, so I hope you don't mind. But like, and then when people are like, when somebody online is like, I hate this YouTube creator, Why would you follow him? And then they put the link to the person's video. Like all you're doing is driving traffic to their video. It's like there's a button on here called "Don't Recommend Channel." I have arthritis from hitting "Don't Recommend Channel" so much because it's like, you know what? If I don't like a video, that's one thing. But if you consistently put out videos that I'm just like, you're too negative or you're too this or too that, I'm hitting the door. And I don't recommend the ones that you might be thinking, but there are some I'm just like, I can't put up with this anymore. And I just hit that button. And guess what? They don't exist to me. And I'm happy as can be because I don't have to see it anymore. I see what I want to see. The algorithm clicks on what you want. And the thing is, when you click on that video of the person that you're supposed to hate, YouTube is like, oh, you want to watch more of those videos? Here's the other one by this other person that's doing that. And that's why everyone keeps seeing these videos. And that's and it sells. And this is what people are clicking on.
Yeah, I definitely find it's hard to find people who are being critical. I appreciate someone who can hate something but also have ideas of their own of what they wish they would have done, when it's all just like, wow, that was awful. Why did you do this? Why did you do that? Rather than like, adding something to it, because they do listen to the ideas. I've had creatives tell me personally, like, well, if it was a good thing, don't tell me about it, because they're not allowed to cherry pick and just use people's ideas for obvious reasons. They're not going to go and use a theory that Star Wars Theory came up with in something they made. Like, so if you want something cool to happen and you got a good idea, don't tell anyone about it, because they might actually be able to do it. So I don't know. It's just like, it's tough. It's tough. The conversation is years ago, the conversation has moved far away from speculation and theory. And I it's hard to not blame these big channels who have stopped doing speculation and theory and leaned into everything else, because that's what people are watching. That's what's popular. That's where the edgy comments are. Like, everybody wants to be edgy nowadays, and nobody just wants to be like thought provoking, I guess. Like, I don't know.
We have a comment. Oh, sorry, Heidi, go on.
No, I was just going to say, nobody ever calls McDonald's to tell them about the amazing employee that waited on them. They only call McDonald's to complain about they gave them a side eye by mistake.
It's true. That's anybody that worked in retail knows how true that is. You get very rarely do you get positivity. I want to go to this comment from Brent, though. This is a great point, and I think about this often, actually. Ryan Johnson embracing the online "Your Snoke Theory Sucks" campaign, making it a lot of fans feel like they wasted time having speculating. Now, I never cared about who Snoke was, but I loved speculating and having fun with it. And coming out and saying your Snoke Theory, and the Snoke Theory Sucks stuff, I thought was fun and funny as well.
Me too.
But also the Ryan Johnson thing is like, yeah, but it was so much fun, and it's way more fun than it is now. Like the comments used to be a lot of fun to read through. Now, Heidi, so I had to blow up a little while ago. I'm just tired of like some of the comments. I'm like, you didn't watch the video? You saw the title or the thumbnail of the video, and you're making a comment. But when it was Snoke theories, it was fun, and everybody was in on it and having a good time. And sometimes you were serious, and sometimes you're just joking around, and it didn't matter because that's what made Star Wars fun. And like you said, Scott, it's lost that in the last 6 years. Like it's lost that hard. And this was probably the catalyst of all of it.
Wasn't that Steel? Didn't Steel Wars start that?
Right. Yeah.
Dude, and you know what's really funny about that is that everybody was having so much fun with that before the movie came out. And then when the movie came out, they're like, wait, that's it? And then when it all went downhill and everybody got sour. But dude, the fandom had an opportunity. We did when Mando was coming out and they had like the jars of Snoke. Your Snoke theory sucks hashtag trended again for like
did it really?
Weeks. It did really well, and everyone's having a great time joking about the sequels and stuff. But it's just like, here we are again. It's like my favorite line from Jurassic Park when they're running from the T-Rex and the car falls back on them, and the kid's just like, well, here we are back in the car again. It's just like we have no place to go. We are stuck here talking about the same shit over and over again. Infinity.
I think I love it too. I always joke that I don't talk religion, politics, or Star Wars unless somebody agrees with me. But I think I think there is, even though I'm joking about that, there is a similar feeling about it because nobody wants to be told they're wrong. Nobody wants to be told if you like it, you're not a fan. Nobody wants to be told if you don't like it, you're not a fan. So I don't know. I think that's why people are sensitive about it and they're so protective of their own feelings and they don't want to feel like they're missing out. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of the prequel trilogy, but I accept that they're a trilogy, and my opinion, I wish there was the same story told in a different way. So that's how I look at it if maybe something isn't as good. And even though I wasn't the biggest fan of the prequel trilogy, I absolutely plotted when Hayden Christensen showed up in both Kenobi and Ahsoka. So I love these characters. I appreciate these characters. And maybe you don't like a series or a film as much, but that doesn't mean you can't still like something in general or appreciate a character. And like the fandom that's so against Disney now, I mean, I can remember even up until the Phantom Menace came out, there were complete like YouTube channels just dedicated to how I would have done the prequels. So these people act like the prequels are sacred, and they weren't sacred. They were spat upon forever.
Mm-hmm.
When we first started on YouTube, there was a lot of the videos were on changing the prequels, how the prequels, it was a lot of negativity towards the prequels way back then. And that actually, we're gonna bring this comment from Ron Prasak, Patreon Ron Prasak. What if a show in the Mando era blatantly contradicts something major from the sequels? How would that go over with fans? Would Disney take a risk that big? I think they could do it. I think George Lucas, we talked about this idea earlier. George Lucas didn't care. He would do it too. And I think as long as they could find a way to make it work and work better, I think they would do it. I think I've said this a bunch of times. I think George Lucas and J.K. Rowling, I think they are two creatives who would write themselves in a corner and use what they created to get out of that corner. And I think you find someone, if it's Favreau or whoever on the Mando era, if they can do something that they can get out of a predicament with and have to rewrite a little bit of history or future, whatever you want to call it, I think they'll do it. And I think fans are going to be fans and there's going to be the split down the middle or whatever it is, and you're going to see it from both sides as always. But I for me, I don't know how you guys feel, but I think they would do it.
Well, like Lucas painted himself in a corner by having Luke and Leia talk about her mother in Return of the Jedi, and her talking about, I was really young when she died. I just remember just shadows. Really, I remember she was beautiful but sad. I'm like, well, yeah, she was sad because she was dying during childbirth. But they went back and retconned it that that's actually a force ability that you can see. You can have visions of someone who died, even before you were born or while you were being born. I think in the comic book, she was on Naboo and she could see and feel her mother's presence while she was on Naboo. So that's what they do. They just retcon something into a force ability. I mean, not to toot my own horn, but the one book I wrote, I had this person in 1 week under 2 full moons. I'm like, well, I can't have 2 full moons in a 6-day period. So I just had it. Okay, how do I get out of this? Because I still needed full moons those both nights. I'm like, okay, well, I'll just make it that where they are, the time moves a lot slower here. So I mean, if you like paint yourself in the corner, you can try to find your way out.
Superman spun the world.
You can do that.
Superman spun the Earth in reverse so that Lois Lane wouldn't die. You can do it. You can do whatever you want.
I wanted to touch on that question about the sequels because, like, there are a lot of things they did in the sequel trilogy that they can still fix. I for one would appreciate if they would just back a money truck up to John Boyega's house and say, hey, would you like to actually be a Jedi for real? Because that storyline's still there. But I don't know, man, about this next trilogy. I heard, like, hopefully we don't get another time jump. But I heard, like, old Rey stuff. I would hate that. Like, I don't want them to... I don't know. I feel like the only way they right any of the wrongs is just to continue writing that story.
part of the problem with what happened was, and where the split really began was, I think Luke Skywalker was a big catalyst for that, like the way he was portrayed in the Last Jedi, and it's whether you agree with how he is or not, and that was kind of the starting point for a lot of fans was that, and I think I was kind of indifferent to it because like a year before on the podcast, Brock was like, "What if Luke doesn't want to help her and he's crazy?" And I'm watching the movie. I'm like, "Oh my god, he said this a year ago," and so I just kind of felt like it was a little bit lazy at that point. I'm like, if Brock thought of this a year ago, but also the problem is we go from Return of the Jedi, Luke Skywalker is a hero, to The Force Awakens, he's a myth, he's the greatest, and we don't see him until the end, and we're like, ah, and then you got to wait 2 years, and then he's like, nah, and he throws that lightsaber with the Looney Tunes music, and we don't get any growth from him at all. And I don't, because the argument is like, no, this is how people would act, and it's like, that's fine, but you don't see it. And so like some of the audience can now be like, I accept that because I'm going along with it, but the other half are like, but I didn't, that's not who I grew up with. That's not who I've been watching for all this time. And even the movie before it doesn't set you up for what you're getting either. I mean, you could maybe argue, but let's be honest, J.J. Abrams wasn't setting up that Luke Skywalker either. So you don't get that. So I understand both points of view on it. Like I said, Brock ruined it for me a year in advance. But like, so I kind of get it. But, and that's the problem. And I think Boba Fett's the same. I think what they did with the book of Boba Fett, like Boba Fett's a badass, but we've never seen him as a badass. Ever. Like he's not a badass. And so we get this bounty hunter who's learning to be the person going to liberate this village, but we've never seen the badass that everybody wants. And so I think those two characters were kind of fumbled very similarly.
Yes,
obviously in different ways, but and I think that's part of the problem with it is like you said, Sky, that time jump, that Jedi and Force Awakens is 20 years, whatever, 30 years apart, and we don't get to grow with those characters in that time at all.
Maybe people would be more accepting of Luke being like that if we had actually seen how he got to that point, just instead of just telling us that. Although I think George Lucas's original treatment for the sequel trilogy had Luke in the exact same position, broken and cut himself off from the rest of the like his sister and the rest of the cast, or I mean the rest of the original film.
I think I've heard some things about similarities too, but yeah, the time jump I think is definitely what is hurting a lot of the content, because we're relying on like our love for Mark Hamill and his love for Luke Skywalker and his good acting to convince us that Luke has been through enough to do such a thing, rather than having the story build us up to that point. But something that I've always said from the beginning, which now it's like they're not even doing that. It's like they should be creating content that fills in that gap. Like Bad Batch is what you're doing to try to help fill in like some of this stuff. Like you got to do more than that. You got to convince. They got to. All right. So what we have to do is figure out a way to put Luke Skywalker in stuff. First of all, because the AI thing, like I think can work. It's probably super expensive. So you got to get him into things. You got to, bring, I think what they can do is bring people back to the sequels the same way the Clone Wars kind of animation brought people back to the prequels. So
I was going to say, I love the prequels, like I've since the beginning, but Brock was never a massive fan of them. And he attributes the Clone Wars to getting him to like, and we don't have that for the sequels.
They need something like that.
They do. Absolutely. They do. It could be live. It could be live action, be animation, whatever, but it can't
it's
be
the Luke story. Honestly, it's the Luke story. It's the Luke story through and through, and it involves Kylo's birth and everything, man. Like we need that. We need all of it. The whole gap filled.
Well, during Rise of Skywalker, we heard about the adventure that Luke and Lando went on. I'm like, I want to see that story.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things. Like there's so many comics they write where I'm like, man, why can't we just put that in a show?
Yeah. Well, like Mando, I think is leading some things to the sequel trilogy, like explaining cloning and Hux's dad being in it, and also you could even say something like the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. Like it's a little thing, but I remember watching the sequel trilogy, and I'm sitting there, and it's like, why would Han and Leia name their son Ben? She didn't know Ben Kenobi, and Han knew him for like a day, and he couldn't stand him, so why would they bother that? But I go back and watch Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I see, oh, she and Ben Kenobi actually did bond. So that now makes more sense, because I'm sitting there watching, like, why is her kid named Ben and not Bale? Because she adored her father. I mean, she wasn't going to name Anakin. She hated it.
It's because J.J. Abrams was a big Kenobi fan. Anyway.
but I'm saying, I mean, even something a little bit like that kind of filled that.
No, that's what they need to do more of, and they need to do it. Yeah, they need to do more of that. Like the Lando and Luke thing. I think they did that in a book. They're like, here's a book about their adventure. All right, well, the 17 people, exactly, like 17 people are going to read it, and I'm sure it's a great book. But that's not satisfying the fans of this. And the thing is, like, the Clone Wars, like, worked for a lot of people, but it was animation. So now you've and this is no disrespect to animation. I love animation to death, but it's not live action. You don't get the same fan base out. Like you get, like, I think more adults, especially in North America, are going to come out for live action Star Wars than they are for animated Star Wars. That's just the mentality that we have here. Is animation is more for kids and it's a little more juvenile, even though it's not. But that's how it is. That's the perception of it. So, but now you have Disney Plus, and you promised a movie a year when you first came out. Like, why don't you fill in these gaps? If you make a movie and people are like, I don't understand what happened here, do it. And I think we talked about this earlier. I can't remember if we were on Sky or not, with Sebastian Stan playing Luke Skywalker. And I was never really into that. But now I'm like, just freaking do it at this point. Like, I've stopped caring now because we need those gaps filled. He's showing up. It's AI. People hate AI, but they love it in Lord of the... It makes no sense. The Lord of the Rings fights are all AI, and people freaking love that to death. But you put Luke Skywalker AI, everybody hates it. So get another actor to play the damn guy. Who cares at this point? Because Mark Hamill's not in his 20s or 30s anymore. So there's your excuse to find another actor to do it and make a series about that. And as long as he has a scene, at least once, similar to the Death Troopers in Mando Season 2, everyone is going to love this show. And you might have the fandom back to where it was at least the first season of Mandalorian.
You know, we are literally at a point now where Mark Hamill himself has said he's okay with it. So 50% of the fandom is like, wow, Mark's okay with it. I'm on board too. Let's do it. And then the other 50% of the fandom is like, I don't care what Mark Hamill says anymore. He hasn't played Luke Skywalker in 30 years. So do it. Yes. Like, everyone's on board. Like, everyone's on board for different reasons. Like, there's people out there that actually hate Mark Hamill now. It's so crazy to me.
Yeah.
It's so crazy to me.
I mean,
go on.
You could do something.
I mean, he's very outspoken, but it's like,
well, if I don't agree with someone, I just ignore him. But anyway, it's my thing. But no, I mean, you could do something like tell stories in live action, or maybe just have somebody like tell a story about like Luke Skywalker or Princess Leia or Han Solo, and have it be from the point of view of somebody who's listening, who didn't see the movies. I mean, not like if you're telling like Broom Boy the story of Luke Skywalker, we could see the thought going through Broom Boy's head, and we could cast different actors that way, because he's not going to know what Luke Skywalker looks like or Princess Leia looks like. I'm just saying it's a way to get around it. You can do that with science fiction. The guy who died, who was on Ahsoka, they have to recast him, and it's like, oh no, he was in an accident. Now he has to cover his face from now on. There's all kinds of things you can do.
Helmets, right?
Yeah.
He turned more Sith. You could put him in a helmet, right?
Yeah.
Be more creative with things, for sure.
You know what? There's points here that are Al saying somehow Star Wars fans still be hated by Star Wars fans. Disney says everyone's on board except for the YouTubers who will get outraged by everything. And here's the thing, though, and you're saying, Scotty, just do it at this point. And I think what happens is, I said this earlier, if you Marvel it, if you do what Marvel does, and you just keep putting it out, and maybe they're not all great, but most of them are good, and you'll have a stinker every once in a while, but you will exhaust everyone to the point where you can't keep up making all the content to go about it, but you'll kind of win some of the other audience back and be like, oh, they're still making decent stuff here. Oh, I didn't like that one so much, but this one's coming. It looks pretty good. Like Skeleton Crew. I don't know if it's going to be good, but let's say for argument's sake that it's fantastic. And Acolyte, let's say, was even worse than it was, and we all hated Acolyte. We're like, oh man, that sucked. But then they're like, guess what? August 20th, Skeleton Crew's coming out. We're like, oh, right away? And we get into that, and all of a sudden, it's the greatest thing we've ever seen. The Acolyte is cleansed from us. We're like, I forgot all about that show. Now I'm all in on this one. And then they could take a little pause until the next one. And then the next one could be good or bad, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm just using those two as an example. I'm not saying, I have no idea if Acolyte might be horrible. I have no idea. Or not Acolyte, Skeleton Crew might be horrible. I don't know. But that's what Marvel did. They were like, Iron Man, Captain America, Hulk, Thor 2. Like, Thor 2 people didn't like. And then they're like, what was after that? They're like, Winter Soldier. And everyone's like, Marvel only makes amazing movies. You forget that the one you just watched you weren't a big fan of. And I mean, they're not going to do that, but I don't, whatever. They could.
I mean, I know it goes against some of the books, but one story I would love to see is Leia meeting Anakin's ghost. Do they have a conversation? Does she just tell him to go whatever to himself? Does she meet him after she dies at the end of Rise of Skywalker? I want to see that interaction. I've seen him interact with Ahsoka. I've seen him interact with Luke. I want to know what happened, what conversation he might have had with Leia. To me, I find that interesting. But you might think that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard. But that's just my opinion. But I mean, there's a lot of stories you could tell, and some people are gonna love them, and some people are gonna hate them.
Yeah, that's how stories work, right? Like, and then the problem is like Heidi can like this, and Scotty can like that, and they should be able to have a conversation, and not want to choke each other out. And I think what's happening is people are having conversations like this, and no one's having them like this. This is behind the backs, and this is face to face. Is what I'm trying.
Well, the other thing too is that people are having conversations over here while people are overlooking these conversations and picking apart what people are saying about these conversations. And it's like, bro, why do you care so much about what I'm talking about with my friends over here? Mm-hmm. Like, I feel like a lot of people with all this BS that's happening this weekend, it's like, stay in your lane. Just you're all making money, please. I'm not. I'm eating ice cube. I'm eating ice cube sandwiches. Please subscribe.
Ooh, ice cubes. But that's not the other thing though. Too is the clickbait headlines are a big problem, or titles or whatever. And I said this earlier. I'll go on and I'll see comments. I'm like, but you didn't watch the video because you're commenting on this. But we talked about it from this perspective. That is kind of agreeing with what you like. People don't watch the video; they just take the clickbait, or they take a little piece of what happened, and then that gets run with. And I like to bring one. I'll bring this one up because it has nothing to do with this. But Zack Snyder again. He talked about Batman and how he always wants to put Batman in like a tough situation, like to kill or whatever. And I had a friend be like, Zack Snyder only wants Batman to kill. I'm like, no, you didn't listen to the interview. That's not what he's saying. He's saying he finds it more interest. And you explain it. Now you can disagree with him still. I'm not saying that. But you can't, but everything is taken out of context is the point of it, right? They're taking just the what they want, and it's all spun in whatever direction you want to spin it in. And it makes for, I don't know, it's insincere at the end of the day.
Yep.
Let's see. Oh, we got some comments. That's just it, Desi. The YouTubers will have figured out how to press those buttons within the fandom, so much so that it's now a freaking story on Forbes. The true Star Wars fans are being played. And it is a story on Forbes. That's where the title of this video came from, was that story on Forbes, which I thought was ridiculous. But I wanted to bring this one. Brent Solden. I'm a different Brent Solden. Do you know many people who like most Star Wars, including all the Disney stuff, or most of it, including the 1978 holiday special, like me? I also liked the Acolyte and look forward to Skeleton Crew. I know Heidi doesn't like the holiday special at all. I've honestly liked most of it. I haven't liked all of it. There's been stuff that I haven't liked, but I definitely have liked most of what we've gotten so far in both eras of Star Wars. Heidi, what about you?
I mean, my thing is, I always say, there's a Star Wars that I don't like. There might be a Star Wars that I like the least. Because I think it's all good. Like I said, I'm not the biggest fan of the prequels, but I still enjoy them. And I can appreciate the story behind them. And there was a lot of stuff cut out of it. interaction between Anakin and Padme that I guess they cut for time or dragging the story, but maybe if they left it in there, maybe it would have made the relationship a little bit more believable for me.
Scotty?
What was the question? Sorry.
Do you like all Star Wars, including the holiday special and Disney stuff? How do you feel? You don't have to say if you like it all, but how do you feel about it?
Yeah. I was just gonna say, for me overall, Star Wars, like kids nowadays will label it as a shill, but I hold Star Wars to like much higher regard than Marvel, than DC, than all these other IP. So I find the good in everything. I'm looking for those plot lines, like I said, that aren't just dead on the vine. Like, I'm excited for every new project that comes out until it's over with. And then if there's nothing left to be excited about, like with the Acolyte, there's nothing left to be excited about. That doesn't ruin my day. I'm not hating on people who want more of it. I want more of it if it goes somewhere, you know? So it's like, there can be bad story writing, dialogue. I try to look past the dialogue and look at the overall plot and stuff. But
yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, that was it. I'm just rambling at this point. I try not to hate Star Wars because I love Star Wars. So
I mean, there's bad dialogue in the original trilogy, so
right. Sure. And it used to be funny. We used to have fun with it. You know, it's just like everyone's so damn serious.
But I'm going to Toshi Station to pick up some spare parts.
Even the Harrison Ford line, man, to this day, it just sticks with me, where they're literally sitting in like the script, they're reading the script, and he's telling George, like, George, you can write the stuff, but none of us can say it out loud. He's like, he literally is screaming at George Lucas saying, read it out loud, George. When you're writing this stuff down, read it out loud. Say it to yourself in the front of the mirror. Like, he has a point. He has a point. It's just goofy space dialogue. And it's hard to mix in the serious emotions when you're including all this stuff about, like, you know, the witches and comparing them to Dathomir and the threads of fate and stuff like that. It's like, I don't know. I'd hate to be them writing it.
I want to bring up Bread last because I want to tie this into yours. I'm not a hardcore fan of either Marvel or Star Wars, but I've watched most of the main line of both. I feel like their current offerings just aren't going to draw the kind of numbers that they want. I feel like I think that's like when you step out of the fandom social area, I hear a lot of people, like friends outside, just being like, nah, I didn't really like that one. I didn't really like that one. I'm hearing that more and more lately. And these are people who they're not arguing. They're just saying, it wasn't really they're still watching Star Wars because it's Star Wars, but it's just not their thing. I think that's a problem, is what's missing in Star Wars, and how do you bring it back to what it is? And I'm going to contradict myself a little because I keep kind of comparing it to Marvel or saying it should be like Marvel, but I'm with you, Scotty, where Star Wars is bigger than that. It's closer to a Lord of the Rings, but it's even more than that. It's this whole galaxy, and they have this whole lore set up and built around it, and that's part of it. I think what makes it really tough, and what makes it really tough with the content creators arguing with each other, is so many Star Wars fans are introduced to Star Wars through different means of entertainment. Like the Heidi was one thing. I'm pretty sure I was toys. I don't know what you were, but there was the prequels, there was Clone Wars, maybe it was Rebels, maybe Resistance even. And because Resistance is now 6 years old, so the 6-year-old watching it then is now 12. They're getting older, or 12-year-old is now 18, and they're so like everyone's kind of getting older, and you're all, or maybe it was a book or a comic, who knows what it was, and we all have this different entry point into it. And so our expectations and what what we want from Star Wars is vastly different, because how we view it is vastly different.
And this point can't be understated. Like, say it louder for the people in the back. DC, Marvel, you all have like this umbrella over you, because you have a very strict comic canon, very strict multiverses and how they both work. And all of these movies are staying this close to the retellings of these comics. Whereas Star Wars has legends. They have told so many stories throughout Legends that connect to none of the main plot lines, connect to none of the new shows that have come out now. Some people love the expanded universe. None of that connects to any of the stuff that we're doing now. None of the OT stuff connects to that. None of the OT stuff connects to Resistance and what they're doing now. There are multiple generations of fans here. There's now multiple generations of fans watching YouTube channels. And we are literally seeing like the generational divides of fandoms and whether or not your parents were raised as fans of XYZ. And like, it's getting crazy. It's getting crazy out there.
Well, we do. Sorry, Heidi, go on.
I was going to say that Star Wars in general changed movies forever. Yeah. It was the first blockbuster. There weren't too many sequels. Also, it made science fiction a viable form of entertainment that wasn't just, it wasn't the stuff from the 50s or the 60s, like The Blob or anything like that. The big sci-fi movie a year before that was Logan's Run. And if you watch that, the special effects aren't that great. I mean, Disney made the black hole because they kicked themselves because they turned George Lucas down when he pitched Star Wars to them in 1976 or 1977. They said, oh, we're not going to do that. That's too expensive. And the only reason Star Wars even got made was because Alan Ladd Jr. at 20th Century Fox believed in the script, because otherwise no one would have ever made it because it would have just been too expensive. And it just changed everything. It changed going to movies. And I think COVID has done the opposite, and we're now streaming more. Nobody's going out to the movies more. And I think our attention spans have changed. Like, I used to be glued when I was a kid. My parents used to play that I'd be glued in front of the TV all the time. I don't even watch TV more. I'm glued in front of YouTube because my attention span has shortened so much. Like, I just want to move on to the next video. So I don't think people really go to movies. So you could say Star Wars started the trend of people really wanting to go to movies. But now COVID and the internet and just social media, I think, changed the whole medium anyway. So maybe that's why I thought Disney Plus was going to work. But I don't know. It's like I said, people are going to get on a bandwagon if they're angry, and less likely than people are going to get a bandwagon if something they're happy about.
What I was going to say to that point is every year we do ranking Star Wars. You two are involved in that, where we take a bunch of lists and we put them all together and we add them up and we come up with the definitive Star Wars ranking list. And it's all the movies, only the live action movies. And when we first started it 8 years ago, the prequels were the bottom three. Every time the prequels were the bottom three. When Last Jedi came out, the prequels were the bottom three. But then, so that's 8 years ago. So whatever year that, so the kids who were around for the prequels, they weren't involved yet. But then they started to get YouTube channels. I started to meet them, and and all of a sudden, Revenge of the Sith is like number 3 on the list now. Like, all of a sudden, the prequels are showing up not just on the bottom; they're higher. And so, there's a big shift going on. And Heidi, you weren't a big fan of the prequels, but the 5-year-old, when Attack of the Clones came out, that was the greatest thing he ever saw or she ever saw in their entire life. That's like it's a different perspective on it. And so that's changed, and that's I think that's fascinating, and it's great that we can all do like that. But I've noticed that shift where all of a sudden the prequel movies are going up, and people are always like, "Yeah, the sequels never get there." Won't they? I don't know, because I have no idea. My daughter she just turned 2. She hasn't seen it yet, so I don't know. Like that might, like, I don't make Disney Desi's in the chat. Maybe her kids. You never know, right? Like, the kids who watch the sequels, that might be their New Hope. That might be their Attack, whatever it is. And in 20 years, they might be like, you know what the best movie ever is? Rise of Skywalker. And we're like, are you crazy? And they're like, no, it's the best because it, and like, I watched the Rise of, when COVID first hit, I pre-ordered the Rise of Skywalker because I'm a sucker, and on iTunes, and it dropped early, and my nieces and nephew were over, and they were like 12 and under at that point. And I'm like, let's watch this movie while you're here, because COVID like just hit, and we're like, let's watch it. So we watched it, And when they said that Rey was a Palpatine, I took a picture. It's on my It's on the Rebel Scum Instagram. Their jaws dropped. And then they were over for 2 more days, and they picked up sticks, and they pretended to be Jedi, and they were hitting each other with the sticks like lightsabers. And I was like, that is the point of all this nonsense. Like, this is why I watch what I think of the movie, what you think, doesn't matter. It's what these kids, or the kids right now, are watching this thing, and their imaginations are running wild, and literally the jaw dropped. When
they ain't gonna never capture my childhood again, man. They ain't never gonna do it.
They can't, but we can say what we want. But kids view things very differently from adults. I watched cartoons as a kid that I might put on now for fun. I'm like, what the hell was going on? Like, what do they put in my cereal that I sat through this crap? And kids, they just view things very differently from adults, and I think it's a beautiful thing.
Agreed. I agree. Yep. My kids are boys turning 10 soon, and their attention span is already completely shot. They couldn't even make it through. They didn't make it through the new live action Airbender show. They're like, didn't we do this once before? And I'm like, yeah. They're like, this one's supposed to be better. I'm like, yeah. They're like, it's not. I'm like, okay, we tried. So, it's hard to impress kids alone, with this stuff. But I watch stuff people don't like. I finished Resistance. I'm just here for the lore and nothing more. The dialogue can be trash, doesn't matter. I just want to know where the plot lines are going, what's happening in Star Wars. I'm interested.
Well, I mean, you can ask James. I'm always inundating him with never tell me the odds, because all these crazy theories always jumped in my head, and I send it to him. I don't think anybody never tell me the odds have ever come true. But
that's
fun.
That's the point. Yeah. Although I will say, before Rise of, if you watch our last Never Tell Me the Odds before The Last Jedi, all 3 of the odds happened, and we just threw those we're like, I think it was like Luke will die, Snoke will die. There was 3 things, and we said no, and all of them happened, and we're like, we just
that's awesome.
It's so funny. I love Never Tell Me the Odds for that reason, though. It's it's just stupid fun, which is us watching the stuff is really what it should be. I think people are taking it on both sides way too seriously, and maybe we need to just sit back and just relax and drop our jaw at Ray Palpatine once in a while. Just be like, you know what? Maybe that wasn't great, but my nephew also was 4 years old, and we went to go see the Michael Bay Ninja Turtle movie, the first one, and we're sitting in the theater, and I was like, I don't know how this is gonna be. And my nephew's never been in a theater before. He's on the booster seat, swinging his legs. The lights go down, it's all dark, and he just blurts out in the theater, I am so excited for this movie. And I was like, well, he's gonna remember this for the rest of his life. The movie could be hot trash. He's gonna love it, and that's what it's gonna be. And he had the best time, and that made me have a better time, because he was. And sometimes they're not for us, and so, I mean, we should still be entertained by them if we're taking our kids. But we have to put some perspective on what we're watching. Also, it's lightsabers and wizards and witches and spaceships. And fires in space happened. The Death Star blew up. Everyone forgot about that in that first episode of The Acolyte, that the Death Star blew up in flames, which they altered 20 years later to make the flames even more prominent in the shot. But we won't talk about that.
That's how I go into every new Star Wars thing. I just forget everything that happened before it.
Well, I mean, you were talking earlier about how how you look differently at cartoons and how kids see things differently. But I was thinking about when I watched cartoons, and granted these were originally for adults, but we used to watch Looney Tunes every Saturday morning.
Yeah.
And you know what? Those are so great. I don't think it matters how old you are, as long as something's amazing, it can cross that generational gap.
Yep, absolutely. I loved Looney Tunes so much. I had this one where Daffy Duck was waiting in some meeting somewhere, and he kept putting up signs, and one of the signs was a picture of a baseball and a screw. Yeah. And I was 4 years old, and I was like, what does that mean? And then when I was 5, I think I was in kindergarten, I was screwball. and I started drawing screwballs on like all my paperwork. Like in grade 1, I'd draw like screwballs and stuff, and my teacher wised up to that, and I had a talking to. But Looney Tunes shaped me as well.
I was gonna say some of the Star Wars cartoons that are coming out are amazing. Like all the Tales stuff, like Tales of the Jedi, both seasons of that. I think that they need to. I think that's what they need to do with Luke. They need to just voice act, because obviously Mark Hamill's, that's like his bag. That's what he's doing now. So just voice act him, and I mean, you could probably even get Adam Driver to voice act as well. But why not just bring them two back, do their adventures, do everything? Snoke, like, because Snoke was around in these comics, outside the movies. He was influencing Kylo and had met Kylo and all these other things. So the fans need that to ever come around to the sequels. We definitely need a much more fleshed out Luke Skywalker.
Well, I'm hoping some of the stuff will happen in the Mando movies, or the like multiverse.
Well, we're supposed to get Battle of Jakku, right?
Yeah.
I mean, eventually that's got to be a huge Luke-centric moment. He's like the hero of that stuff. So
here's a question for both of you. I brought this up to Brock on the last podcast. Is what about one-off shorts? Like a live action short. Here's a Luke Skywalker short, and maybe you see something. I don't know how long it could be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it needs to be, but it's just a one-off. It's not a feature. It's not long, but you get the like Tales of the Jedi and all that. Like they're shorts. Why not that in live action? Why not do something like that in live action? Then you don't have to be like 8 episodes. You don't have to worry about that. Just give me a short little story about what happened with this. What happened? Fill in some gaps that way.
My only fear is you'd have to do that in the volume, because you're not going to spend a lot of money on a 15-minute short, and everybody's like, "Oh, you can tell you're watching the volume."
Oh, yeah.
That's too much of a tease, man. I think you're either all in with Luke or you're not.
Well, Luke is probably a bad example for that, but I mean, like just a short story about X or Y. The Luke thing, I think I'm with you. I think we need at least a series on what happened there. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you could do Luke as a movie. I don't know if Disney would either after the Solo debacle. I don't think they would, but as a show, why not give me an 8 episode, because that's what they are, 8 episode story about Luke. I know it's not enough. Don't care. I'm not, but let's just.
I don't think that. Going back to it, man, I don't think that anybody would have accepted Sebastian Stan. Even with Mark Hamill's blessing, I don't think that movie with him starring as Luke Skywalker is dead on arrival. It's going to be a straight to streaming if it ever was getting made. So
no, the thing is they recast it, and now it was 16 years later, but they recast Obi-Wan Kenobi.
But he was younger.
True.
Yeah, and the problem with Luke is we've seen Mark Hamill young and old.
Right.
And then, but they recast him when he was a boy, so they
can't unless you want to do that. Unless you want to do a movie when it's like 14 or something.
Yeah, but then what's the point of that show? We need a multi-season Luke show, says Brent Solden. Yeah. And Vermont Mike saying that Trek did some live action shorts that were good.
I think I don't know what Filoni is doing, but I think he's putting all his eggs into the Anakin basket and doing as much as he can with him. Hopefully when he gets bored of that, he goes back and does the same thing with Luke and gives Luke the same treatment. But I feel like Dave Filoni has been completely silent, radio silent, not even showing his face, except if it has anything to do with Ahsoka or Anakin at this point. And that says a lot to me, I think, about like I don't think they know where they're going. I don't think they know where they're going. Dave might be the only one who knows where his story is going and where the end is. But after that, I don't think anyone has a clue.
I said this in a video a while ago. It's like, I think they need to just take a break. Just like we got Skeleton Crew coming, we got Andor coming, right? And Ahsoka season 2 is coming. So just take a break. And when I say take a break, I don't mean just stop. I mean, take a break and do what they did for the High Republic and have who is the brain of this? Is it Favreau? Is it Filoni? Is it both of them? Is it Watts? Who is it? Have them in a room and just plan something out. You don't have to plan out 10 years necessarily like Marvel does, which would be great if they did. But give us 5 years, maybe. Be like, in the next 5 years, these
just
are the
don't
stories
skip 10 years. How about that? Just don't skip 10 years.
But like, what really annoys me is last year at Star Wars Celebration, they announced 3 bogus movies again. They're like the Dave Filoni thing, the Rey movie that Ron is in the chat saying it won't never happen, and then the Birth of the Jedi James Mangold one. Well, Indiana Jones tanked. I don't think that's happening. But imagine if they just had a room where these people sat and they're like, let's brainstorm. And they connected those 3 movies. And there's a connect. And the reason why we're getting those specific movies is because they each have a connection to each other. Instead, they're just like, what are we doing? They're just throwing it. And that's where you're losing everyone. We'll accept Rogue One once in a while, like a spinoff. Mm-hmm. But Star Wars has been one. I think everyone forgets too. Star Wars is, other than like the other media, it's been one story. It has been Luke, Han, and Leia, right? And then it was Obi-Wan and Anakin and Padme. And then it was Rey, Finn, and Kylo. Like, it's like we've had like it's been one story. It's all the Skywalker saga, as they ended up calling it. But it's been one through line, and now it's all over the place, and we don't know where to look anymore. To your points earlier, we don't know where to look anymore, and that's part of the problem. But if you just sit down, take a break. We have 3 years of content coming at us, plus the 2 movies, and just be like, this is the goal. This is what we're doing. And I think the sequels. I think that my biggest issue, I've said this a million times, is there's no why to the sequels. I don't know why they made those movies other than to make money. Like, I don't know what was the plan. Why did you have to tell 3 more Star Wars movies? What are they actually about? And then I think we were saying earlier with The Last Jedi kind of gives you like, okay. And they're like, fans didn't take to that. Let's just do this. And you're like, but just figure it out. Like, when I walk into something, just let me know what I'm in for, and I'll go along on the ride with you. And maybe at the end of the ride, I'll be like, that wasn't what I wanted, but at least I'll know that you went somewhere, that the ride went somewhere.
Well, I mean, you talked about earlier about shorts. I mean, I would love for them to resurrect, was it Star Wars Detours? I think it was a cartoon
the Seth Green one, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, but I just remember this Friday, I think, is the remake of the Galaxy Lego movie. I think premieres this Friday, so I'm definitely looking forward to that. They could do stuff like that as fillers.
Yeah,
I would love for them to bring back, if they would resurrect Detours. I think people would enjoy that, because I know I love Robot Chicken.
I think it looked hilarious too, and the animation looked awesome. But I think what annoyed me though was that the Lego holiday special that they did, when they're like, Finn's training to be a Jedi, and I'm like, I get this in Lego. You couldn't give this to me in the movie or in a show. You're giving it to me in Lego. Like, Lego is expanding the lore better than actual like Lucasfilm is. Like, it blew my mind. Like, I was almost annoyed watching it, how I was getting more Finn in that, like a better version of Finn in that than I got in the last 2 movies that he was. I'm like, whoa, I'm gonna get it in Lego.
Well, I like to point out that Lego Batman might have been one of the best Batman movies in years.
I think a lot of people agree.
I don't know. I watched Batman and Robin like 2 weeks ago, and let me tell you, it's awesome. It is.
Okay. I'm sorry. Nothing's better than Batman 66.
No, Adam West is my Batman forever. I used to rush home to watch Same Bad Time, Same Bad Channel. Big fan of
Disney, just give Patty Jenkins the Rogue Squadron movie already. Yeah. Like, just please let her do it.
Is that because
you got nothing else? You got nothing else planned?
But that game's good. Sorry, how'd it go?
Was that because Wonder Woman 84 didn't do well? Or
exactly, that's the same thing with
that's the way that people try to. But so that's the way that like YouTube and media tried to like make it seem, was that she wasn't going to get that because of what that movie did. But anybody who watched her promo and listened to her talk about her father and his experience in the Air Force, like, you don't think she has more passion for this movie than she did for Wonder Woman? Like, I don't know. These decisions they make are so weird to me.
But does Disney have faith in her after Wonder Woman? And they did it with Trevorrow, and they just, I don't know.
And then Trevorrow's script came out, and a lot of people liked it.
Yeah, which you know what, I thought it was cool, but I also saw Jurassic World Dominion. and the other one before is that the third. I've seen all 3 Jurassic Worlds, and his name is on the writing credit for those.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to say it would have been better at all. I don't have any faith in how it would have turned out because I saw those movies and my face was. I made a face through all of them that was like unbelievable.
You know what they need to do? They need to bring back George Lucas, but not surround him by yes men, because that's when you got Star Wars at its best.
Well, from what I remember, is he was around for The Force Awakens, and then they got J.J. Abrams, and they were like, goodbye.
If they don't hurry up, AI is going to find all these unwritten scripts, and it's going to take all the best things from them and put them together and make a movie better than they can. So, I mean, that's like, what, 10 years away?
Yeah, after all the computers are slaves and masters, they'll show us a new Star Wars.
AI is getting crazy.
Al Schuler, at this point, there's no Star Wars content I want more than the behind-the-scenes story of the last 10 years of Star Wars. Honestly, I would love that because I know that J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson, like, they were like, oh no, we liked each other. They did not care for each other at all. Like, you could just tell, like, Rian Johnson's like, well, I don't like this storyline or this character, so I'm going to make my own character, and it's going to be about this. And then J.J. Abrams like, well, I don't like your character, but I like my character. I'm going to make new characters that are better than your characters.
They're like Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner.
Yeah. that was
just trying to sabotage each other.
That's what it was.
I remember one thing because like Ron Howard is really good friends with George Lucas, and I think he wanted Ron Howard to do one of the prequels.
Yeah,
and he was on set for Solo, and so that's a big thing that George Lucas directed one scene in Solo, the one where Ron Howard tells I block names.
Right?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Hang up the cloak, and George Lucas goes, "No, wait. Have him drop it on the floor." Han Solo would never hang up Lando's cloak for him, so that's why he drops on the floor. That's the thing. That's that one scene in Solo that George Lucas directed.
And you know what? That's the modern. That's their big positive PR stunt now, is throwing George Lucas on the set of their productions. It's like, oh yeah, or like Rian Johnson,
he's here, give him the baby, give him
yeah, and now everyone will love it and make it look like it's out of focus. It was taken very quickly, and but people love that. I don't know, they need to find a way to like really, because I also think, I'll talk about this on another show, not today, but I also think Star Wars has a massive PR problem. Yeah. Where there's things are said by employees also, and you're like, oh man, like why do you have to mention things? Maybe stay out of it, so social media can go both ways. But I think we've been going way too long. Sorry, Heidi, we need to wrap this up. It's been 4 hours.
Okay.
Hey, I really appreciate you starting an hour early for me and waiting. You really didn't have to do that.
I enjoyed it. I'm sorry, I talk a lot. I bet.
But thanks everybody in the comments for. Rob Reiner should have directed Solo: A Star Wars Story Part 2, says Brent Sullivan. Been awesome. When Solo met Kira, that's what we'll call it. All right. Thanks everybody. Do you guys have anything you want to plug? Heidi, you want to go first on the plugin?
Sure. Oh, I want to. I doubt he's listening tonight, but I actually got my one coworker Brian to. To subscribe to the podcast. So I just want to give a shout out to Brian. I've talked to him. I haven't mentioned my name before, but I've mentioned talking to him on the show. But anyway, yeah, I just want to plug a few books. I'm missing one. All right. Well, this is my. I don't know what that was, but whatever. This is Bride of the Dragon King under my pen name Andrighton. And nice. This is his Enchanted Swan, which is under my real name, Heidi Feder. You can get those both at Amazon.com. I have 2 other books under Andrighton, and I have this one here if anyone's interested.
Is a giveaway?
Oh, that name looks familiar. James Razile. I've heard that before.
I think he makes pizza or something.
I make pizza.
Yeah, on Instagram or some.
Yeah, some... Scotty, anything you want to plug your channel?
No, I mean I am just me, Scotty Hawk. It's that's my channel. I'm doing a whole lot of other things over there, gaming mainly, but I do want to talk about Star Wars more. I am actually going to react to Star Wars Theory's full video he did about everything that happened today. So, because there's a lot of like things I think that people should hear from both sides, as far as like some of the largest channels that we follow and we all look up to, and so they all must be super cool people and live super cool lives. But no, they're all actually just normal people with normal anxieties and stressing about the same things we are. It's really sad to see that it all comes out in such a hateful form, and that we can't just get back to basics where people were making fan film theories or just explaining what the hell was going on in Star Wars. So yeah, my name's Scotty Hawk. I'm streaming. I do a lot of GTA roleplay, which I think is a lot of fun for people who aren't familiar with it. It's like we are really acting as a true society, like Lord of the Flies set in a GTA world. The cops are actual people. The DOJ is actual people. EMS is actual people. So if you're interested in any of that, Scotty Hawk on YouTube, you'll see the holocron.
Yeah, check them out. I do want to say before we wrap up that Rebel Scum podcast has been on YouTube for 8 years.
Woohoo!
And several, and I've contacted in the past, like years and years ago, I've contacted a few of the bigger Star Wars channels. And I can tell you some of them are very nice people. At least and some of them are not. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to talk about anybody because we're tiny and I don't want to, I'm not going to put anybody down. But I will tell you that I don't get into these things often. Like I don't really care about the drama, but I watched a couple videos on it, and I saw some interesting things that I won't say which video or anything, but lined up with situations and email conversations I've had in the past. I'll say that much to you all. But yeah, thanks guys for joining me today. Thank you all in the chat for being here. It's been a great conversation. It's been way too long past my bedtime now. So thanks everybody. Thanks for watching. Give us a like and a subscribe. And until next time, may the force of others be with you.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up on our video. As always, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Rebel Scum Podcast, for all the latest videos.